You're listening to the weekly Parsha Podcast with Ari Goldwag, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramat Beit Shemesh, Israel, 5785, 2024. This week's Parsha is Parsha's Vayishlach, and at the very beginning of our Parsha, Yaakov Avinu is returning to Eretz Yisrael, and to preempt his brother Esav from having any negative feelings towards him or wishing to harm him in any way, Yaakov Avinu, the pasuk says, Vayishlach Yakov malachim lefanov, Elisha Achiv. Yaakov sends messengers before him to his brother Esav, to where he lives, to Seir, Edom, the land of Seir, the field of Edom, all different names for Esav. The word malachim, the agents, the shluchim that he sends, the word malachim, of course, can mean literal agents, but it can also mean malachim, angels. Angels are messengers of Hashem, right? When Hashem has angels, he sends them to us to protect us, to help us. But they're his representatives, as it were, in the physical realm. Hashem, God, is completely transcendent. He's beyond this realm. But of course, he interacts with our realm, and he does so sometimes directly, if a person is on that level, but sometimes through malachim, sometimes through angels. And we're going to read the Medrash together, which actually connects the last verse of last week's Parsha and the first verse of this week's Parsha. And it's going to tell us, a little preview, that the malachim, the angels that Yaakov sent, the messengers that Yaakov sent were actually malachim, they were actually angels. But they weren't just any angels, they were angels who were part of a group of angels that Yaakov saw when he returned to Eretz Yisrael. So this is what I'd like to share with you today. I'd like to speak about the 600,000 angels that Yaakov saw. We're going to talk about the context. What is the idea of 600,000 and 600,000 angels? We're going to talk about other places where we see the idea of 600,000. Most famously, we know that at Har Sinai, at Mount Sinai, there were 600,000 Jews, 600,000 men, and then another 600,000 women and children. And we'll see what the significance of that is, and we'll also see other places, again, where this number 600,000, perhaps angels, perhaps Jews, comes into play. V'Yakov halach l'darka, this is a medrash actually at the very end of last week's Parsha, connecting into the beginning of this week's Parsha. Yaakov halach l'darka v'yivku voy malachei Elokim. Yaakov went on his way after having a meeting with Lavan, a rather perhaps unpleasant meeting, but a meeting nonetheless with Lavan, creating a pact. They wouldn't, neither side would cross over into the other's area, and that pact occurring somewhere in Syria, which is apropos to today's current events. But that place where that location was the crossover location between Chutz La'aretz and Eretz Yisrael. And as Yaakov enters into the land of Israel, he meets angels, just like we spoke about previously when he left Israel. So he saw angels going up and down the ladder. When he comes back into Israel, again he sees angels. This time it seems that it wasn't in a dream, but rather it was an open revelation while he was awake. And he bumps into the angels, so to speak, Vayifgu v'malach Elokim. And when he sees them, Vayemer Yaakov kasher ro'o machaneh Elokim zeh. He says, when he meets them, he says, this is an encampment of God. Which is very interesting, because an encampment, if you think about it, usually it refers to, it's a camp of soldiers, an encampment of soldiers. It's usually soldiers who are on the move, they're moving, right? Soldiers don't live in any particular location, they're busy fighting. They're on the move, but they encamp when they come to a place where they need to rest. So Yaakov sees them, and he sees this awesome sight of angels. He says, this is an encampment of Hashem. And what does he call it? He calls that place Machanayim. Chanem means encampments, which is plural already. And then our pasuk, Vayishlach Yaakov malachim lefanov, as a medrash, we're going to see it inside, but it implies that the angels that he sent to Esav, and we need to understand why it had to be this way, the angels, the messengers that he sends to Esav, were from amongst the angels that he saw as he came into Israel, and he saw this encampment, as we'll see, double encampment of angels. He sends from these angels to Esav. These are the messengers that he sends to Esav to try to, it's not clear exactly what the purpose of them is, to try to perhaps feel out if Esav still has animosity towards him, or perhaps it was to threaten him, to prove to him that he has spiritual power. We'll see exactly, perhaps, what was the idea behind them. But connection between last week's Parsha, this week's Parsha, he meets these angels, he sends the angels to Esav. Now let's read the Medrash. Yaakov goes on his way, he meets the angels of Hashem. Can you picture the scene? Am Yisrael is returning to Eretz Yisrael. Really, Yaakov Avinu is returning, and Am Yisrael is coming into Eretz Yisrael for the first time. Yaakov and his sons and his wives, and a host of those who are accompanying them, the animals, the slaves. And here they come in, and there's an entourage that has come out to greet them. A huge amount of angels are coming out, and they're in circles. They're in circles, says the Medrash, and they're dancing. They're doing an incredible circle dance. And how many angels were there? Rav Huna b'shem Rabbi Omar, Shishim ribu malachim, hayu chalav na Yakov Avinu b'knisas ha'aretz. 600,000, Shishim ribu, means 60 times 10,000. 600,000 angels came out to dance. What an incredible scene. Yaakov Avinu is returning to the land of Israel. Can you think about this? Each time another member of the Jewish people returns to the land of Eretz Yisrael. 6 million of us, 7 million of us strong. So far, the angels come out to dance for this person. That's me talking, but the Medrash says they came out for Yaakov. 600,000 angels. What's the significance of 600,000 angels? So let's understand, as the Meforshim here explain. It's called a Machane Elokim. Yaakov says, when he sees them, he sees the angels, he sees 600,000 angels dancing in a circle for him, to greet him. He says, this is an encampment of Hashem. We have a general principle. Hashem, when he wants to be Mashra Shechinasa, when he wants to manifest his divine presence, it doesn't get manifested unless you have at least 600,000. The number 600,000 represents the number of Jews at Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, which is obviously an event that's going to take place far in the future, another 400 years later or so, maybe a little less. A long time in the future. But 600,000 is the number of Jews that when you have that amount, you have 600,000 men, and as we'll see, 600,000 women and children. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Mashra Shechinasei. God allows his divine presence to be manifest in such a way that it's palpable. It's an experience. There's a huge spiritual experience. Says the Medrash, it's not just true if you have 600,000 Jews by Har Sinai, by Mount Sinai, but it's also true that you can have an encampment. What does the encampment mean? This is a place, you talk about HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a Merkava, Maisa Merkava. The vision of Yechezkel was a Maisa Merkava. He sees these angels, and he sees God as it were riding upon the Machane, the encampment of angels. He sees the angels. And this is what Yaakov Avinu sees as well. An encampment of angels, and the Shekhinah, the divine presence, is upon this encampment. Rabbanan Amri, Kuf Chaf Ribo. Rabbanan say that there wasn't just 600,000 angels, there was 1.2 million angels. Because the pasuk says that he called that place Machanaim, which means encampments, plural. One Machaneh would be indeed 600,000. Machanaim Arei Kuf Chaf Ribo. When you have the doubling, you get 1.2 million. What does this mean? So, at Har Sinai, you have two levels of 1.2 million. What do I mean? You have the men and the women, right? You have 600,000 men, 600,000 women and children. And you also have, at Har Sinai, as I believe I saw in one of the Meforshim, can't read it to you inside because I don't remember exactly where I saw it, but you have 600,000 angels, and you have 600,000 Jews, 600,000 men. You have a dual layer at Har Sinai. But Yakov, as we'll see, only has a single layer. He has this layer of angels as he comes in. So he has incredible protection. He has the divine presence. It's a symbol. He sees the angels and he knows it's a Machaneh Elokim. God is with him. And God is not just with him on an individual level, but God is with him with an incredible host of angels to protect him. Rav Yudin says, Natal me'elu u'me'elu, v'shalach pruz min lefanov. Rav Yudin says he took from each of these encampments of angels. Interestingly, there's two encampments of angels. He takes from each of them, and these are the ones, it says, Vayishlach Yakov malachim, it's plural. He sends angels before him to Esav. So he takes from each of the encampments, and he sends these angels to Esav. What is the idea? What is the concept? What are these angels? Clearly they represent the fact that Hashem is with him. Why is Yaakov sending these angels to Esav? So I'd like to share with you another place. There's a medrash in the Shir HaShirim that brings this very same idea, but also gives us other contexts, other places where these angels appear. The pasuk says in Shir HaShirim, Shuvi Shuvi Yashulamis. Return, Shulamis means the perfect one. Shuvi Shuvi V'nechazabach. I want to see you. Hashem is saying, Pashtus, Hashem is saying, the male figure in the story of Shir HaShirim is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The female figure is Am Yisrael. It's speaking of the relationship of the Jewish people with Hashem, with God. Hashem says to Am Yisrael, come back, I want to see you. I want to see you. So the Medrash says an amazing thing. There's actually something else going on here we could understand. The Medrash says, the nations of the world say to Am Yisrael, the nations of the world say to the Jewish people, become part of us. Become part of us. We want to see you. We want to use your talents. The Jewish people are incredibly talented people, brilliant people who are moral, who care, who are idealistic, who are leaders, who are powerful. The nations of the world say, come on our side, do our thing, use your talents for secular pursuits. Use your talents, the Medrash puts it, for Avodah Zarah. Yisrael Meshivin Lahem, Am Yisrael says, what can you see in us, in our perfection? You want to use our greatness, our perfection for you, but did you ever see where our perfection leads us when we use it correctly? Like the double circle. It uses the same word in this pasuk, machanaim, which means double encampment. And a machal, machal l'samachanaim, means a circle. a circle dance of encampment. So this should ring a bell because we just spoke about a circle of encampment. The angels of Yaakov. They came to greet him. They made a huge circle dance. And he saw the Shekhinah. But there's another place where there is a circle and a machanayim, a circle and an encampment. And that was Am Yisrael in the Midbar. The Jewish people in the wilderness was set up in a circular formation around the Mishkan, which was the place of the Ashras HaShekhinah, the place of the divine presence. The Mishkan, the tabernacle. The Levites surrounded. Actually, Moshe, Aaron, and their families surrounded directly. And then the next concentric circle was the Levites, and then the next concentric circle was the 12 tribes. And these parallel each other, clearly. These parallel each other. The 600,000 Jews parallels the 600,000 angels. So the nations of the world say to Am Yisrael, we want you to use your beauty, use your talent, use your idealism for what we are idealistic about. For liberal ideals. For perhaps other spiritual ideals, not Torahic, heaven forbid. For idolatrous ideals. Am Yisrael says, hold on a second. Where are we perfect? We're perfect in our mechilas hamachanaim. Shematem yimechem Avram Yitzchak Yaakov avdu avodah zara sheyavdu b'nei achreim. Look at the forefathers. Look at Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Did they use their talents to serve idols? They didn't misuse their talents. They didn't use their idealism for any other ism except for Judaism. Am Yisrael says to the nations of the world, can you do anything? Can you give us anything? Can you offer us anything like what Hashem offers us when we do His will? When we use our talents and our idealistic nature for the true idealism, for God's will? What does Hashem give us? When Am Yisrael, when Yaakov Avinu is in a state of a machane, right? Yaakov refers, he splits up his machane to shtei machanos, right? Unbelievable. In order to deal with Esav, he splits up his encampment to 2 encampments. So Yaakov comes into Eretz Yisrael with 2 encampments, and corresponding to that, there's a double encampment of angels. And the double encampment of angels has upon it the divine presence, and Yaakov knows that his encampment, which is all about serving Hashem, which is all about coming back to Eretz Yisrael, to the place which is the only place that we can truly serve Hashem. That dance that he sees the angels doing is the dance that he's doing with his 2 encampments. What Shekhinah, what greater revelation can you nations of the world offer me than what Hashem offers me when I am in a state of perfection, of shulamis? And then the Medrash here brings the Medrash that we just read. When he left the house of Lavan, which means he got out of the nations of the world. He got out. The base Lavan was a place of idolatry. He runs after them looking for his idols that somebody took to destroy them. Rachel took. He escapes from the house of Lavan, which is all about just materialism and no spirituality. That's when angels appear. 1.2 million. Am Yisrael says to the nations, maybe you think that you can offer me the kind of circle dance that Hashem provided for me when we came out to the sea. Am Yisrael comes out 600,000 strong, 1.2 million strong. Vayisa malacha elikim. And the pasuk says how Hashem took the malach of Hashem, Hashem, as it were, rides upon the Malach, whatever this means, Kamerkava, like a chariot. And he places his protection, takes the Malach, and he places the Malach between the Mitzrim, between Egyptians and the people of Israel, and he protects Am Yisrael from the idol worshippers, separates us, makes us special so that we can be the vehicle for his revelation in the world. Can you offer us that, O nations of the world? Can you offer us the circle dance, the machane, the encampment of angels that Elisha experienced? Shenemar in Malachim Beis, 2 Kings, chapter 6, verse 15. They were surrounded. The Jewish people in Shomron were surrounded by enemies, completely surrounded, hundreds of thousands of soldiers and horses and chariots. And Elisha, who was a prophet, said to his misharis, his servant said to him, how are we gonna win? How are we going to be victorious over such a huge army? And Elisha says, it looks like they're much stronger than us, but we have much more than them. We have so many more fighters on our side. We have spiritual iron domes. We have spiritual airplanes that can destroy all of their weaponry. The Misharis, the servant of Elisha, was able to suddenly see. His eyes were opened by Hashem. He saw what Elisha saw, which was the angels that were there to protect Am Yisrael, which were so much greater, so much more powerful than the enemy armies. Unbelievable. And Am Yisrael says, can you offer us that? And Am Yisrael says, can you offer us what's going to be in the future, where there's going to be a machal tzadikim, a circle dance of the righteous, circling Hashem, God's divine presence upon them. So it's interesting because sometimes it seems that for Elisha, in the time of Elisha, they didn't have a huge army to battle them, but they had the spiritual army of the angels. And indeed, the angels caused the other army to fall. Vayakem basan veirim, kidvar Elisha, the pasuk says, they were struck with blindness. They weren't able to fight. Spiritually, they won. HaKadosh Baruch Hu caused them to win. Sometimes we have both the angels and the amount of people that are needed. There's one more little medrash. We're running out of time here, but later in the Parsha, in our Parsha this week, so we have that Shechem's son Hamor violates Dinah, and Shimon and Levi go and they kill out all the inhabitants of the city of Shechem. Yaakov Avinu is upset. He says to them, Vayomer Yaakov el Shimon ve'el Levi achartem I see. You've darkened me. You've made trouble for me. The barrel was the water was clear inside the barrel, but you mixed everything up, and the dregs came up from the bottom, and now things are dark. Why? The Canaanites, they have a Messiah. They have a tradition that they're going to fall in our hands, in the hands of the people of Israel, which was what happened eventually a couple of 100 years later when Am Yisrael returns to Eretz Yisrael. But Hashem says, there's a Mesorah Yaakov had that we can't fight until we have 600,000. It's very interesting. 600,000. Which, by the way, can't get into, but in 1967, there were 600,000 men, 600,000 women in this country. 1967, Six-Day War. Yisrael had the numbers. We had the Siyata D'Shmaya. Now there's over 6 million Jews. Imagine when all of Am Yisrael returns and we have 6 million men and 6 million women. What a power we'll have. even today. But Yaakov Avinu says, I have the spiritual angels, but when you guys are fighting, this is how I understand it, when you have just the angels, you have the power to defeat your enemies spiritually without doing anything. That's what happened in the times of Elisha. When Shimon and Levi go out, they say, we're going to do this ourselves. And Yaakov says, but we don't have the physical numbers that are needed. We have to depend on the angels themselves. That's the only way to defeat them is with full bitachon, fully relying on Hashem being sheireh. When we have the 600,000 Jews, we're at Har Sinai, we have the 600,000 corresponding angels, we have the Shekhinah, we can defeat anybody. We can walk into Israel and defeat anybody. But if we don't have the numbers, then we have to rely on the angels, as it were, on Hashem himself only. We can't go into battle. That's what Yaakov was saying to Shimon and Levi. It was a mistake, or it was dangerous. If this is the understanding of what's going on here, we can start to understand why Yaakov sends from these angels. What is Hashem signifying? What is Hashem showing Yaakov when he sends him 600,000 angels for him to see as he comes back into Eretz Yisrael? He's saying, you can come in here and you can conquer the world. You have the spiritual power. You might not have the number of Jews yet. It's going to take another few hundred years until you are so fruitful and you multiply. But you have the spiritual power. You have HaKadosh Baruch Hu on your side. Hashem is with you. You have the encampment. And it's manifest in your two encampments as well. You also will have two encampments, but there's like a duality here. Because physically they don't yet have the power, but spiritually they do. So what does it mean when Yaakov takes from the angels and he sends the angels to Esav? As I understand it, it's saying he's taking those that represent his spiritual power, those that represent that Hashem is with him, and he's sending the message to Esav. I have returned, and I've developed to the point through being in Lavan Gardim, Taryag Mitzvah Shamarti. I've been in the house of Lavan, but I remain steadfast, and now I'm returning here with an incredible spiritual power, with 600,000 or 1.2 million angels on my side, which really means Hashem is on my side. And I don't have to do anything. I don't have to fight with you. You will just fall by yourself. That's what Yaakov Avinu was implying with sending these very angels. He was saying, we're like Elisha. I have the angels on my side. I don't need to fight. I'm not even like Am Yisrael coming into Eretz Yisrael when they will come and destroy the Canaanite nations. I'm not even like that. I'm just all spirituality here. And I'm all faith in Hashem that we're going to win. Lamaisa Esav comes, it's a scary moment. It seems like he might have to fight him directly, physically, which he's afraid he doesn't have that power, and that's the hemshech of the story. But really, he has the spiritual powers. Esav is vanquished. He does arrive, and Yaakov fights with the angel, and he wins in that battle. He wins spiritually. But the bottom line of it is, and the message, the take home for us is, that when we completely depend on Hashem, when we have the angels completely with us, we don't have to have so much physical power. Is it a milah? Is it an advantage to have 600,000 Jews that can fight? There's something about us doing it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to fight too. That's what's going on today. But there's something about Hashem doing it for us. So I want to bless you. And I ask you to bless me. And we should be able to have the bitachon, the faith, the trust, the recognition, the realization that Hashem has all of his angels surrounding us, which means there's an encampment and a dance. When we're trying to do the will of Hashem, we're trying to come into Eretz Yisrael. Hashem is with us. Hashem is going to protect us and take care of us. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.